The phone rang in the dead of night, slicing through the silence like a blade. A sound so sharp, so unexpected, that it sent a chill down their spine before they even realized why. The glow of the screen illuminated the darkness, casting eerie shadows against the walls. The name flashing on the screen was familiar, yet something about it felt wrong in this moment, like an omen, a ghost from the past whispering warnings through the static. Their fingers hovered over the screen, hesitating. A deep sense of unease clawed at their chest. Why was she calling now? After all these years, after all the buried memories, why tonight? Something told them this was not a call they could ignore. A deep breath, then they answered. Hello. At first, there was silence. A weighted pause stretched between them, thick with unsaid words, with an unspoken history too tangled to unravel in mere moments. Then, finally, a voice, her voice, soft, yet carrying the weight of something that felt too heavy for the night to hold. I wasn't sure if I should call, she admitted, her tone laced with uncertainty, hesitation thick in her words. But you need to know the truth. You deserve to know. A knot tightened in their stomach. The truth. What truth? The room suddenly felt smaller, the air colder. They swallowed hard, forcing down the lump rising in their throat. What are you talking about? Their voice came out quieter than they intended, almost afraid of the answer. Another pause. They could hear her breathing on the other end, hear the way she struggled to find the right words. Then, she spoke. And her words hit like a punch to the chest. You are not who they think you are. Time stopped. The words hung in the air like a slow-moving storm, creeping through the cracks in their reality, ready to destroy everything in its path. A deafening silence followed, and for a moment, they forgot how to breathe. Their grip tightened around the phone as if holding on to it could anchor them to something solid, something real. What? What do you mean? The question barely made it past their lips. Her voice wavered. Everything you believed, everything they told you, it's not the full story. There's more. And soon, they will know everything. A shiver ran down their spine. Their thoughts spiraled, a chaotic storm of memories and doubts colliding all at once. What was she saying? What truth had been hidden from them? What had they been living in all this time? A reality built on lies. Tell me what you mean, they demanded, their heart slamming against their ribcage. Stop speaking in riddles. A shaky exhale from the other end. I don't know how to say this in a way that won't hurt you. But the truth has a way of revealing itself, whether we are ready for it or not. The walls of the room seemed to close in on them. They could hear the tension in her voice, the sorrow woven into her words. Whatever she was about to say had the power to shatter everything. And then, she whispered the words that would haunt them forever. You were never meant to know. But it's time. You are not who they think you are. The world tilted. The air turned heavy, thick, suffocating. Their breath came in shallow gasps. What are you saying? Her voice cracked. The life you've lived. The people you trust. The story you've believed, it was built on something false. And now, the truth is coming to light. A slow, sinking realization spread through them, like ice creeping through their veins. Their pastor was a lie. The foundation they stood on was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion, and now, it was crumbling beneath their feet. Their voice was barely a whisper. Who am I, then? Silence. The question hung between them, unanswered, unbearable. A shadow of doubt wrapped itself around them, suffocating, relentless. If they were not who they thought they were, then who had they been all this time? I can't be the one to tell you everything, she finally said. But soon, you will understand. And when you do, I need you to remember that none of this is your fault. None of this is your fault. The words echoed in their mind, but they didn't feel like comfort. They felt like a warning. Somewhere deep inside, a truth was stirring, one they had spent their entire life unaware of, one that was about to change everything. The call ended, but the silence it left behind was louder than anything they had ever known. The weight of her words lingered like a slow poison in their veins long after the call had ended, the silence of the room amplifying the echo of that final, damning sentence, you were never supposed to find out until it became a mantra of disintegration, unraveling the very fabric of their reality thread by painful thread. The darkness outside the window no longer just an absence of light but a physical presence pressing against them, thick and suffocating, the air humming with an almost electric charge of impending revelation as their mind raced through a carousel of fractured memories, each one now suspect, each cherished memento, their 5th birthday party with the clown that terrified them, their high school graduation where their mother's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, even last week's mundane coffee with a friend who'd studied them a beat too long, transforming into potential clues in a life that might never have been theirs to begin with. Their hands trembling violently as they reached for the framed photograph on their nightstand, the glass cool against their sweating palms as they stared at the frozen image of their supposed family vacation to the Grand Canyon, searching the faces of the people they'd called parents for some telltale sign of deception, some flicker of performance in their expressions, but finding only the same loving gaze they'd relied on for 30 years. Which now somehow made the nausea worse, because if this was all a lie then the acting was flawless, the world building impeccable, and they were just a puppet who'd never noticed the strings, the walls of their apartment or their home, their sanctuary suddenly feeling like a meticulously constructed set piece in a play whose script they'd never read, every object, every memento now radiating sinister potential as their pulse hammered against their eardrums in a deafening rhythm of what if, what if, what if. Their reflection in the blackened window across the room catching their eye and holding it hostage, the face they'd shaved and washed and recognized every morning of their adult life now belonging to a stranger. The features familiar yet suddenly foreign as though seen through a funhouse mirror of existential dread, their breath coming in short, panicked gasps as the full weight of the realization crashed over them that they didn't know who they were, the foundation of their identity crumbling like ash in their hands, their name possibly not their name, their birth date potentially arbitrary numbers assigned to create verisimilitude, even their childhood allergies and fears potentially engineered rather than organic, the sheer scale of the deception making them lightheaded as they gripped the edge of the bed to steady themselves, the phone lying innocently on the rumpled sheets like a loaded gun waiting to be picked up again because they knew, with a certainty that chilled their blood, that there was only one person who could answer these questions, only one number they could call that might lead them through this nightmare, but dialing it would mean stepping through a door that could never be closed again, would mean trading whatever fragile peace ignorance offered for the jagged, possibly unbearable truth, their finger hovering over the screen as time seemed to distort around them, stretching seconds into eternities while their mind raced through every possible outcome. What if they discovered they were stolen as an infant? What if they were a replacement child for someone who died? What if their entire existence was some twisted experiment or cover story? The scenarios spiraling increasingly darker until their vision blurred with unshed tears, the pressure in their chest building to an unbearable crescendo until some deep, primal instinct for self-preservation kicked in and they found themselves pressing call before they could second-guess the decision. Each ring like a hammer blow to their sternum as they waited for the voice that might confirm their worst fears or are somehow more terrifying or reveal something even beyond their darkest imaginings, the moment stretching into infinity until finally, mercifully, the line connected and that familiar but now ominous voice said simply, "You shouldn't have called," and in that suspended heartbeat before responding, before demanding the truth no matter how devastating, they understood with crystalline clarity that their life would forever be divided into before this moment and after, that nothing would ever be the same regardless of what they learned next, and the terrifying, exhilarating realization that they were about to become someone else entirely, whoever they were always meant to be. Now the question turns to you, the reader, gripping these words, your own pulse perhaps quickening in sympathetic dread. What would you do if your phone rang tonight with that same earth-shattering revelation? Would you have the courage to follow the rabbit hole all the way down, no matter how deep or dark it went? Would you risk your entire sense of self to know the truth, or would you hang up, delete the call history, and try desperately to unhear what you'd already been told? The terrifying beauty of this scenario is that it's not really hypothetical. We all have versions of this call waiting for us, moments that demand we choose between comforting lies and painful truths, between the selves we've always been and the people we might need to become. So I ask you directly, forcing you to sit with the discomfort of this scenario, if everything you knew about yourself turned out to be fiction, would you keep reading the story, or burn the book? The answer, when you find it, will tell you more about who you really are than any birth certificate ever could. The weight of her words lingered long after the call ended, pressing down like an unseen force, thick and suffocating. The night, once just another stretch of darkness, now felt infinite, as if the stars themselves had dimmed in response to the revelation. The air was no longer just air, it was dense with unspoken truths, with the weight of a reality unraveling. Questions surged like a storm inside their mind, each one more relentless than the last. Had their entire life been a lie? Had every memory, every moment, every belief been nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion, a stage play performed for an audience of near themselves? And if so, who had written the script? Who had pulled the strings, ensuring they never questioned the narrative? What kind of power could orchestrate such a deception, and for what purpose? But what if this wasn't just about identity? What if this was bigger, much bigger? What if this revelation was the first domino in a sequence that would topple every assumption they had ever held about their destiny, their wealth, their very purpose? Somewhere in the unseen fabric of time, hidden from their awareness, a legacy had been kept from them. A fortune, vast and undeniable, had been written into their name, locked away in a vault of divine timing, waiting for this exact moment to be unleashed. The universe had not been indifferent to it, had been conspiring. Every setback, every tear, every moment of doubt had been a necessary step in a grand design, leading them here, to this precipice of transformation. The floodgates were opening. The dam of lack was breaking. And they were standing at the center of it all, whether they realized it or not. Money is energy. Wealth is frequency. And right now, the air around them was vibrating with the unmistakable hum of financial breakthrough. It pulsed in the walls, in the floor beneath their feet, in the very breath they drew. The chains of lack and limitation of those heavy, rusted things they had dragged for years were shaking loose, collapsing under the force of a truth they were only beginning to grasp: abundance had always been theirs. They had simply been kept from it, blindfolded by circumstance, by conditioning, by the lies of a world that thrived on their ignorance. But no more. The call had not been a coincidence. It had been a sign, a divine signal, the first note in a symphony of wealth that was about to crescendo in their life. The veil had been lifted. The inheritance they never knew existed, the wealth that had been hidden, suppressed, or stolen, was now making its way to them, drawn by the magnetic pull of their awakening. Divine timing was not some distant promise, it was here, unfolding in real time. Doors that had been sealed shut for lifetimes were now swinging open, hinges groaning under the weight of destiny. The financial burdens they had carried, the debts, the struggles, the sleepless nights spent wondering how they would make it, were being lifted, not by chance, but by the unshakable laws of the universe. This was the moment of transformation, the pivot where struggle would end and prosperity would begin in earnest. They could feel it, couldn't they? That electric current running through their veins, that tingling in their fingertips, as if their very cells were vibrating in anticipation. That wasn't just adrenaline, it was manifestation in motion. The universe was responding to their readiness, to their belief, to the unspoken command they had sent out into the ether the second they dared to imagine a life beyond lack. They were no longer prisoners of their past, no longer bound by the stories of scarcity they had been fed. They were stepping into the truth of their financial destiny, a truth that had been waiting for them all along. The whispers of doubt slithered in, as they always did. What if this isn't real? What if nothing changes? But those whispers were relics, echoes of a version of themselves that no longer existed. That persona, the one who doubted, who feared, who accepted lack as inevitably, was gone. In their place stood someone new, someone who understood that wealth was not just currency but consciousness, not just luck but law. The new reality was here, and it was one of power, of divine favor, of a wealth so profound it would rewrite every limitation they had ever known. There was no need to chase money anymore. Money was chasing them. Opportunities were aligning like stars in a predestined constellation. The right people, the right moments, the right decisions, all of them were converging effortlessly, pulled into their orbit by the gravity of their transformation. The hidden wealth that had been kept from them, locked away in trusts, in forgotten accounts, in the hands of those who had no right to withhold it, was now flowing toward them, unstoppable. Their bank account was shifting. Their investments were multiplying. Their financial reality was bending, warping under the sheer force of divine abundance, until the old rules no longer applied. This was their confirmation. The universe had spoken. The tides had turned. The financial miracle they had been waiting for or praying for, begging for was unfolding at this very moment. All that was left was for them to claim it, to speak it into existence, to type it into the world and seal this manifestation with action. My financial breakthrough is here. You had to say it. They had to declare it. Not as a hope, but as a fact. Not as a wish, but as a reality already in motion. Typing those words was more than an act to it was a covenant, a signal to the universe that they were ready, that they were claiming what had always been theirs. Every letter, every keystroke sent a ripple through the unseen fabric of existence, unlocking doors they didn't even know existed, dissolving barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. This was not just a message, it was a movement. A revolution of wealth, a calling forth of divine riches that had been suppressed for too long. The shift was happening now. The time was now. The breakthrough was now. And as they typed, as they declared, as they believed without reservation, they would watch, awestruck, as the universe responded with a speed and precision that defied logic. Money would come from nowhere. Opportunities would appear as if summoned. Favors would be granted by people who had once seemed indifferent. This was the law of attraction in its purest form, the undeniable proof that wealth was not just something to be earned, but something to be remembered, reclaimed, and revered. So they would type it. They would say it. They would believe it. And they would watch as the world rearranged itself to match their conviction. The breakthrough was not coming. It was already here. This felt like a confirmation, a sign from the universe saying, yes, we heard you. You deserve this. It was like the world had spoken, and everything was turning in their favor. The money miracle they had been hoping for, maybe secretly, was actually happening right now. They knew they had to do something. They had to acknowledge this good fortune, to accept it fully. They had to say it out loud, to claim what was theirs. They had to speak it into existence, to make it real with their words. They had to type it out, for the whole world, or at least their small corner of it, to see. So, they thought the words in their head, feeling the power behind them. My money is coming to me now. It felt right, like a truth they had always known but had forgotten. They looked at the space where people could write comments, their fingers hovering over the keys. This wasn't just about reading a message and forgetting about it. This was about taking part in their own change. Typing those words felt like a step forward, a way of telling the universe they were ready to receive all the good things coming their way. It was like sealing a promise, sending a message out that they were open to abundance. They imagined the energy of those words spreading out, touching everything, opening any hidden pathways, breaking down any invisible walls that had been holding them back. This wasn't just a simple message, it felt like the start of something big, a movement towards a better future. It was like a shift in the world of money, a call for great riches to come into their life and the lives of others who believed it was possible. Things were changing right now, at this very moment. The time for waiting and hoping was over. Now was the time to claim what was theirs. The big breakthrough they had been waiting for was not far away, it was happening now. And as they started to type those powerful words, Feeling the conviction in their heart, they couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. It was like they could almost see the universe responding, things starting to move, everything aligning to bring that financial miracle into their life. They typed the words, they declared their belief, and they waited, full of hope, to see what would happen next.